yeah, we're already 4 minutes in. So
Let's get stuck in.
I'm gonna, if everybody's ready, I'm gonna do a young intro. Okay. Welcome everybody to the second episode of the Gillian Custard Show. My name is Walton. That's Aiden somewhere on your screen or in your ears, and Lee. Lee is in Abu Dhabi. He's also a Cape Townian. I'm a Cape Townian. I'm in the United States, and Aiden is in Cape Town. Hopefully, the greatest DJ and producer in Cape Town at the moment, Omar Moto, will join us later on. He has some family matters that he's taking care of. But today, on the second episode of Jelly and Custard, we want to discuss the youth unemployment crisis in South Africa. We coming to the end of Youth Month. We commemorated Youth Day on June 16, and from the beginning of this year, a lot of stats were coming out about the levels of unemployment in South Africa among youth at the moment. And so we just wanted to have a discussion, some analysis on the range of this issue, but also, like Lee pointed out in a conversation that we were having separate to the podcast, we also want to think about, like, so what are the possible solutions to this issue, like to this crisis, and what can we make happen that will potentially change the nature of the way things look. So I don't know if either of you want to jump in. I'm also happy to jump in to start off, but I did a whole intro, but so maybe my voice is too much for the community.
I don't know.
Hey, just give me a second, Aiden. Just cut that bit, like cut off the Wilson's talk. I just want to close the door.
Okay.
I can hear Lucas in my headphones.
So unprepared. I'm joking.
Okay. I have the Stats SA page in front of me here that says the quarterly labor force survey. And this was released on the 1st of June, 2021. And it says that the results of the quarterly labor force survey for the first quarter, it basically states that the main numbers that we are looking at is the number of unemployed persons remain almost unchanged at 15 million, right? It's a slight decrease of 28,000 in the first quarter of 2021. And as Hendrik pointed out, I got confused because I first saw the stat of 46.3, or was it 43.6%? And then he said it's actually 60%. So, I mean, we can wait for him to clarify on the difference. But I was more interested in how South Africa actually defines youth, and it's anyone under 35. Am I correct?
Yeah, so Aiden can say more about this as well, but like there were various stats, right? Like the one publication had like 15 to 24-year-olds were classified as youth, and then I was thinking, like, what 15-year-old is applying for a job, outside a casual job? I know it's a reality, but it shouldn't be a reality. And then there's the whole, if you're in the youth league, you are a youth until you're 35, so therefore the national standard for youth must be 35 as well. So that will obviously increase the number. But maybe Aiden can, he also gave us some good stats. Yeah.
I mean, here's the thing about that 15 to 24 and what the South African state deems youth. Like a young person is what, 15 to 35 or something, according to the South African government, or the, I guess, Stats SA. Whereas like across the world, I think the UN's definition of youth is 15 to 24. Okay, look, I was working when I was 15.
Yeah.
And it's then that I realized that actually the legal working age in this country is 15.
Oh, is it 50? I thought it's
because
60.
yeah, I
thought it
was
was
fired,
16,
man.
so-
I was sent home because the manager was like, no, you're 16, you shouldn't, you're 15, the legal age is 16, you shouldn't be working. And then my dad was like, actually, the labor law says that 15 is the legal age. So unless that's been changed, I mean, we can update this in the next episode. But unless that's changed, 15 is the legal working age in this
Okay.
country, which I'm not sure if that's obscene or not, but it is the legal working age.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I
it's
think
just
that-
strange.
that-
I think it's casting such a big net to say like up to 35. And I think statistically it's dishonest. Like I think you get away with a lot when you do that. Because I think the unemployment rates for the 15 to 24 was over 60%.
Over 60%, yeah.
Yeah, and if that's the window you're looking at, then the unemployment rate is actually much larger than we think.
Right.
So
Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Which I think is a truer reflection of the crisis at the moment. Probably is that 15 to 24 range, because that you know that the end of that 24-year-old period is the period that you kind of, if you're going to a tertiary institution of some
Yeah.
kind, a training college or whatever, that's the period that you're starting to look for work and trying to get work. What I also thought was interesting is the specification in the stat that people who were unemployed because they have given up hope in employment and so have stopped like applying for jobs are also included in the stat. So not just people who have been applying and not gotten a job, but people who have actively given up and said like, I can't do this anymore. And I think it's important that we also chat about that a bit, because I think
Yeah.
folks, the impulse attitude would be to say, well, those people are lazy, those people are, they don't want to work, they've clearly given up, and therefore that's their issue and not the state's issue. But I think I bring this up because I was one of those people for a long period. For 2 years, I just couldn't. I was a mental illness, the state of the nation combined with mental illness, so it was hard to like be going out and applying every time and getting told no, 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 even with multiple degrees. So I just thought that the inclusion of that line was interesting, but I think it's like important that I at least mention it, because folks give up on applying because of how the job market is and how hard it is, and also how hard it is to travel. Say you live in, like, I don't know, on the edges of Malibu in Cape Town, and you have to travel to the CBD, and you for a job interview or for multiple job interviews, that gets demoralizing in a serious way. And
yeah.
so I just wanted to mention the fact that they also, that some of these write-ups kind of specified that they included that demographic as well.
I think that's such an important point that you're making, Walton, because I think the problem is not that people don't have jobs. The problem is also that people don't keep jobs, or that jobs aren't things that, you know what I'm saying? And that's not, and I say that, I said it, and now I want to kind of clarify what I said, because
Do it. We
I
have the
feel
time,
like-
because I know where you want to
Keep
clarify.
your job. Yeah. No, I know what you mean.
I feel like it's such a dangerous rhetoric as well, because you say people don't keep jobs as if it's their fault, when
Right.
really, like, the whole system is so weird. Like, what is that? Another key statistic that we should talk about, or that I think people should pay attention to when they hear unemployment stats, is this thing of an absorption rate, which is the rate at which people stay in jobs, right?
Retention
And I think
as well.
Yeah, it's like a retention. So that portion of the labor force, that 15 to 24 years, right, there's an unemployment rate of over 63% there, and there's an absorption rate of about 7.6%. That means that only 7.6% of the total number of people who get jobs stay
Stay
in those
in their
jobs, right? So what happens to the other? Okay, I didn't do maths at school, so
It's
but
it's
what
it's
happens
like
to the other percent?
92.4%.
92.4. Thanks.
Right. I want to talk about
yeah.
like our own experiences with work at a young age. Like you guys know me, like when since I came to Cape Town, I hopped. Whether it was working night shift in town, catching 6 o'clock in the morning train back home, dodgy line, or working at JJ's for 12.50 an hour,
Yeah.
or just working at that farm, like the restaurant there. I was you put so much effort in, and so we need to look at those that retention of 7%. They probably found um, jobs that they could be supported in, they could grow in, there was potential. And the other work was just like survival work, like working to just feed yourself, to clothe yourself, to pay off your bills, and you get treated crappy, and then you just move on to the next one. And I lived that. Walton's too has been through that. Aiden, you were working at Woolies and Stodels, and from early. So we've experienced. We were working youth, and there is something to be said about taking advantage of young workers as well.
Yes.
This is another thing that is overlooked, because number one, this person must jump through hoops to even get an interview. Once they get the interview, they will say and try to get the job because they've been through so much. They've borrowed cash to travel. They've borrowed cash to buy
Get clothes.
Clothes, because and
Yeah.
like they've got their 2 years experience, but I don't know how they got it, because people still asking for nonsense like that. So once they're in the job, then they are willing to just do whatever it takes, and gets taken advantage of very easily. So that 7% were probably, let's say, treated fairly or okay. And like I like what Aiden said about that stigma of like, you need to retain your work, you need to keep your job, but you don't have to. Like, if you treat it shit, then you shouldn't. But I just think youth are taken advantage of because there's such a lack of youth employment. Whatever you get, you need to keep. And we can't judge. Some people just need to keep their job to feed the family that they support. And it's a very, very tricky and conflicting situation that young people are in a country like ours. I don't know if you guys have anything to add to that, but it's just like,
no, it's a big
sad,
problem.
man.
You can go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Okay, I was just gonna say
go ahead.
also, like Lee was bringing up our personal experiences, and I remember, a family member started a restaurant, and she was like, do you want to come work for me? I was 17 at the time, and I love her to death, but she didn't have business experience, and so she didn't understand, like, how to take care of employees and stuff like that. And I was earning the minimum wage, which was 8.50 at 8.50 at the time. At 17 years old, I had to pay for my own petrol to get to work.
A pie, Coke, and airtime.
And sometimes I would, because our chef was flaky, she didn't show up a lot to work, I would work the kitchen and the floor, and I was the only waiter.
Wow.
So I was the only waiter.
Wait.
I was doing kitchen work, like cooking, cleaning, and stuff. And like after the lunch rush, we often had deliveries to the buildings in the area, and so I would go be the delivery man as well. So I would like make the food, wait the food, deliver the food, all of that. And I think you're absolutely right that it's very easy to take advantage of young people, because it's a situation of, we just want to get out, we just want to get a job so that we can like begin to establish some kind of freedom for ourselves.
There we go.
So that we can go out with our friends once in a while. So that we don't have to ask our mother for money for shoes or whatever. And I, Black kids are carrying the financial guilt of being, the kids of parents who had to come out of nothing, like in a very literal sense. Growing up in apartheid, most of our parents had to come up from Foko, so we constantly have to live with that in our minds also. So I don't know, you're absolutely right, Lee, that it's just so easy to take advantage of us. It's easy to manipulate us, and it's easy to keep us away from unions also, or like
Oh.
meaningful union engagement, or like seeking some kind of representation in a collective manner, and stuff like that. So
So
Yeah,
what can we, so if there's young people that are listening, they get their first job, what, like Aiden and Wilton, maybe you guys can come a bit through strongly on this point. Young people who, let's say they've left university or they left matric and they've landed their first job, what are some of the advice you can give them when it comes to forming collectives or unionizing or just knowing their rights, or just like where can they go, or are there places where they can find out information? Because number one, you want to protect yourself, and number two, you also want to know, or you want to protect your coworkers. You want to form a bond as employees to say, hey guys, that's not right, like we shouldn't be doing this, like. So I feel like they need to overcome that yeah boss mentality of like, I got my job, I'm just gonna put my head down, I'm gonna do this thing. And a lot of people do that, and I can't blame them
we
because they don't
can't
want to.
blame
You can't, like,
anybody.
it's difficult for me. Like, I'm asking you guys the question, but like
Yeah.
a lot of people just be like, hey, that's nothing to do with me, like.
Mm.
What
I
are
mean,
some
I think
advice?
like before we even get
I've
into
walked
that
out. I've
conversation,
walked
let's
out of a waitering job
Wait,
because of,
I think I
you
know
know.
where Aiden is going, and there's like a
no,
pre-conversation that needs to be had. So let's go,
there,
Silent.
there's a pre-conversation that needs to be had about this idea of of being a casual. That, like, I don't know if you guys
Yes.
grew up with
Oh
being a
my
casual,
God.
but
Sportsman's
casual
warehouse, bruh. Casualing.
it went from being a casual to then being
Temp,
flexi time. Like, I remember I used to work flexi time at Woolworths, whatever
temping.
that was, work 8 hours a week instead of, and I think that it is like this precarious existence in like the workplace that is so tricky, like a hire and fire kind of scenario. And I don't have any particular advice for young people in terms of like how you can collectively build bargaining power. I think that's a thing that you need to build in a workplace, is bargaining power.
Yeah.
And build connections with other people that work with you. I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah.
But I think
Yeah.
that people need to have permanent jobs in this country.
There we go.
Like,
Well,
we
yeah,
can't be like, casualization is a problem.
Yeah,
and it's moving up the ranks, eh? Like,
Yeah.
people are like, yeah, but
Academics.
why does casualization doesn't affect me because I've got my 2 degrees, I've got my master's, I've got my PhD, whatever. It's like it's affecting people higher up as well, like in the legal
lecturers
in the industry,
as well.
in the academic space, wherever you go, precariousness is the name of the game now. And how do you manage that?
So I mean, I'm in the States now, and they have a very messed up adjuncting system, as they call it,
There we go.
for university graduates who want to teach. But basically, it's like a factory for labor exploitation. So like, I know, NYU is one of the worst culprits, where they treat the whole institution like a corporation that has its factory, and it's like constant rotation of people coming through and leaving. I know some friends and comrades at Yale managed to unionize around their adjuncting jobs, but also their TAing jobs, and their standing as employees within the institution if they are PhD students, and that's had ripple effects elsewhere. And so, like, to your initial question, Lee, I would say, much like Aiden said, I don't have the direct answer about organizing labor power to generate bargaining power, but I do think that there is something to be said for people who have the people need to have conversations with each other as colleagues and say, like, this is what this is what I'm unsettled by in the workplace. And I think what's scary for employers who exploit people is employees who talk to each other.
There we go.
And so I genuinely feel that the agitation will come from young people who are employed at the lowest level, economically speaking, and I'm very hopeful in that sense, because I do think that that's where a lot of it will come from. It's just a matter of generating that initial conversation and getting a small ball rolling and continuing from there. But the last thing I will say on that for now is that I think that the exploitative employers are afraid of collective action. So
Yeah, I love it.
So whatever you do, just make sure you're not doing it alone. Whatever kind of action you take, make sure you're not the only one in a room with an employer. Whatever letters you write, make sure there's some kind of witnessing going on, because they are exploitative people are afraid of collective engagement. And I think that's all I want to say for now. I don't know. We can pick up on it as we go along. But
there's while you were speaking, there were two things that I can now recall that actually helped me. And it's a different world from being unemployed and student to now being an employee. It's a different space you need to navigate, and there's a lot of inferiority that comes with that, and imposter syndrome that comes with that, because you got the job, now you need to perform. And there's also this attitude of overperforming, or always pleasing your superiors or your supervisors, whatever that may be. What helped me in when I started teaching was two things. One was finding a mentor, and that'll take a while just to suss out like your colleagues, and just see like, okay, I like this guy, he's been here way longer than me, or I like this person, they've been here way longer than me. He says I need to stay close to them, or just you need to pick someone. You need to find one or two people that can give you that guidance on how to be an effective employee, not for your workplace, but for yourself. How to protect yourself. That mentorship and finding someone in the workplace that you can kind of build a relationship with, a professional relationship with, but that can also be frank with you to say, hey, don't do that, do that, and just show you some ropes and give you some advice. And number two, what also helped me was joining a union. And the teachers union in South Africa is really good. There are a few that you can choose from. Also, just do your research and find out which suits you and who can represent you best, because you're going to need that. Hands down, you're going to need that sometime or another. Normally, there's a fee that you need to pay, but it's worth the while. It's something minimal. And once again, that comes from a position of privilege, because a lot of people don't have, like, do waiters have a union? Like, do kitchen
this is what I wanted to say. No. So, and this comes back to the casualization conversation. The labor language in South Africa is engineered in such a way that people actually legally oftentimes are going to find it very difficult to unionize, because they're in jobs that are casual, part-time, flexi time.
I'm just temping.
They're not permanent employees. So I feel like I'm sure there are organizations who have like Indefuna Kwazi or Chisamani or whoever has like really looked at the language around like employment and who is allowed to organize, to unionize and stuff like that. But I think something that's concerning and something that we need to take note of is that for some people, even joining a union or forming a union might be impossible. To be a tutor at a university in South Africa means you cannot form or join a union because you're not technically an employee, yet you are working exorbitant hours in a job that is exploitative and underpaying at most universities. Well, at some universities, I know UWC is extremely underpaying.
I think at most.
At most, okay. I didn't want to.
The
I
whole
didn't want to.
system is messed up.
You-
No,
you
the
and I-
system is
be honest and
system
just
is
say it,
messed
yeah.
up. But yeah, I don't know. I think there's also like maybe a slight pivot, but I think we need to also consider the question of the. So first of all, there's a gender pay gap, like a gender earning gap in South Africa that is among the worst. But then there's also like a gendered unemployment and poverty cycle that is also in many ways unmatched globally. So like for instance, we households headed by women are, I don't know, I don't know what the percentage is, but they are extremely unlikely to escape poverty. In fact, they are more likely to enter into poverty from a position of being relatively okay. The upper end of the poverty line, now relating the gender question and the unemployment to the poverty question, is that the upper end, the top end of the poverty line is 1,227 rand. That was in 2019. I don't know what it is right now, but that's what they basing their stats on, their analysis on. I don't know where in South Africa you can live on 1,227 rand a month, and that's the top end. The low end is something is under 500 rand.
Yeah.
And
like
so
450,
and
475 or something.
Something like that. And so, I bring that up because I think we always speak about like equal opportunity, black, BEE. I'm forgetting the acronym now. I don't know why.
Black work.
Yeah, we're always talking about these issues, but
transformation.
We need to talk about how intertwined all of these things are and how intertwined it is with questions around gender and obviously questions around race, because the majority of these folks who are unemployed are Black people, and we need to think about why that is. And that has to do with historical cycles of oppression, historical poverty because of those cycles of oppression, lack of equal education because of those cycles of oppression and poverty, and so on and so forth. And a lot of that falls at the feet of women. A lot of the brunt of that work, labor, effort is falling at the feet of Black women and young Black women as well. And I think when we're talking about what are some of the solutions that we want to talk about, well, one of the solutions is free and equitable education.
Yes.
Like if you actually wanna talk about how are we gonna handle this crisis of employment, we're not gonna handle it by creating 800,000 jobs that people are not gonna stay in, because we know the absorption rate is only 7.6%, like Aiden told us.
It's a development complex, man. Yeah.
Yeah. So my one of my solutions is, and this is where I want to be hopeful, is to say that a free and equitable education has to be the first priority. And I'm not talking about a free and equitable education as in every school has a building. It can't operate from the position of the bare minimum. Like there has to be a solid attempt at providing education for everybody, but especially young Black women, Black girls, and to help them to stay in school. Not just say, here's a school, come here, but to help them actively to stay in school, to have things like extracurricular counseling available, activities like choirs or whatever, sports or debate or whatever it might be. people do not in South Africa do not understand the extent of under-resourced schools in our country. They will see the big headlines. Oh, there's a school that's under 3 in Khayelitsha there, or somewhere in the Eastern Cape or whatever. But if you look at the broad scale, it's an issue. It's an issue all the way. You know, it's not just the
There are schools
outliers.
in urban areas, like in the middle of cities, like Joburg, Cape Town. Like there are schools in Bonteheuwel that don't have Ravens. Like, you know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
it is what you say, Walton. Like that is a big, and I don't have the stats on hand now, but I do know that the graduate unemployment rate is vastly different to like the normal unemployment rate. I think
So what does that show you? It
something
shows you that what Walton said is true. Like should be the first point. If that is a vastly different statistic from graduate unemployment to ones that are not given free and equitable education, whether it's secondary or primary, secondary or tertiary, then immediately there's a gap. But because of the corporatization or capitalization of universities, the monetization of tertiary education, that's going to put us even further back.
Yeah,
they're gonna just take us back because Aiden, what was that thing you mentioned about the grant? The what is it? The government grant that you get, the idea that you had about everyone gets like a kind of fee or subsidy or income.
No, I mean, this is the basic concept of a universal basic income.
Universal basic income,
which I think we should have an episode on, because I think one, I don't think I know enough about it, so it gives me an excuse to go and read up a bit more on it.
Yeah, we can also like think of
two, because I
examples,
think I think it, just to take it back to what Walton hinted at earlier, which was around labor power, right, and around your position as an employee and this idea that you owe your employer something. And how kind of weird that is actually. Like, once you start to think about it seriously, like, why would I love my job? Like, honestly, like, do you know what I'm saying? Like, on some base level, that is just like the neoliberal individualism reimposing itself. It's like Walton said once, and it sticks with me. I think about it most days. Walton's like, we got, like, the Catholic gave us guilt, the Catholicism gave us guilt, and the Protestants gave us the work ethic, and like either way we fucked, man. Like, you know what I mean? They would Vic. Like, like, and like, this is not to say, I mean, we must also preface this by saying, this is not to say I want to be lazy and do nothing.
Well, yes.
Yes, into an extent. No. I think
I'll come in after you. Sorry.
Okay. Let me just quickly clarify. I think it's this idea that it's not that I want to be lazy and do nothing. It's that I want to work when I want to work, and I want to be able to have access to leisure time and be able to have access to learning new things. It's like Marx's idea of working 5 hours a day and then, like, I don't know, going and sitting and reading for the rest of the day. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, that kind of availability of agency and time to yourself to do the things that you want to do, like, that would be ideal. But materially, like, in terms of like, what do you need materially to be able to make that happen? And I think, like, that's where universal basic income comes in. That's where, like, free education across the board comes in, because then everyone is on some level, on the same level in terms of being able to get to that place. You know what I mean? Yeah.
I just wanted to say on the matter, and you clarified it there at the end about the Marxist idea of working 5 hours and continuing on with your day and thinking about other things. But at the core of that point, of that argument, is that so many of the jobs that we are doing in the world, where we spend 8 hours a day at work, we actually spend 4 hours of the day lollygagging, like trying to just be productive for the sake of looking productive. You know, what I mean?
It's the curse of busyness.
Exactly. It's exactly the curse of busyness. And I'm kind of impressed by some of the some of the union organizers here in the States and like their language around that, and really pushing for shorter work days because the employees are extremely efficient, and because of that they are punished because they are efficient, with a supervisor or a boss saying, why are you standing around, why are you not doing this, why are you not doing that, as opposed to saying, holy shit, you finished that job in 4 hours, salute, go home, like, you know.
I need to give you more. You need to
But
work now. Now I can
exactly,
get more out of you.
exactly, because I employ you for 40 hours a week, you're gonna stand here and twiddle your thumbs for 40 hours a week,
I
for
bought
20 hours
40
a week,
hours.
and exactly,
I'm buying
and
40 hours.
and you know,
So we need to make that 40 hours. We need
there's a term for buying someone's body as labor, and like and what that is, that people seem to only apply to gay men and women, and I will leave that out in the ether, and we can think about, you know, what purchasing someone's body as labor is in many instances. But I do think that, you know, I think the universal basic income is one solution, and a lot of capitalists are going to push back and say, well, how are we going to generate that money? We are a country that is like 3.6 trillion rand in debt, like international debt or something like that. Oh, like something over 3 trillion rand. I can't remember the exact name, 3 point something trillion rand. That is crazy. But I also want to say that that's an imaginary number. The IMF has no, like, they don't have recourse for this kind of for these kinds of exorbitant fees, for these kinds of exorbitant interest rates, and so on. And you know, we can talk a lot about like why they were established and all of that shit, but we need to start figuring out how we're going to take care of our own, how we're going to take care of our own people, our own stuff. One of that is destroy all golf courses. Another one is you increase the taxes, the taxation on the wealthy, because they're still not paying nearly enough, and they're like filtering their money out of the country with ease. And then, you know, another thing is like stop allowing corporations to determine policy and politics in our provinces. So we have, you know, we spoke last week about Amazon coming in and all of that stuff. There's money to be recuperated from all these wealthy parties in the country. Fucking Sanlam.
I don't think
Sanlam made billions under apartheid by being super racist towards black people. Okay, they still operating with impunity and living their best life. Old Mutual living their best damn life. One of the wealthiest companies on the continent. I don't know, in the hemisphere, whatever the hell. Just, you know, tax the shit out of them and start putting it into schools, and then we start from there. We start somewhere, at least. Let's start somewhere. I don't know what the fuck. Why am I waving my arms like this, bro?
Like I don't know. Wave it all about. I think like it's the equivalent of underlining and bolding and I'll put that in the transcription. Full caps, bro. Why am I waving my arms?
I'm underlining my speech.
I'm underlining myself.
Oh Lord!
I don't think you even need to go there.
I want to
touch quickly, Lee, and then you can come in. I just wanted to say that.
Go for it.
That the argument about there not being money for a universal basic income misunderstands a universal basic income as a social grant, which it is not, right? Like a universal basic income is not a social grant. What it does is it produces a kind of, let's call it a kind of buffer space in income, right? Disposable income that someone can then reuse in the economy. So in a sense, a universal basic income is more generative for the economy than not having a universal basic income. Now, I'm sure I'm probably going to get a lot of backlash from listeners saying, you know, like, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. So when we have the episode on universal basic income, I'll unpack this a bit more.
Yeah.
But I think that, that's important to consider.
And then also, Aiden, just like if you can bring us some examples of other countries that have done that successfully. Obviously, we have our own issues, and it's not cookie cutter solutions. Everyone has their own context and that. But I mean, there are probably some working examples of that. I wanted to touch on the tax thing, and although I think that is very, very important and very high up on the agenda to tax the wealthy and having a maximum wage as well as a wealth tax bracket, and better regulation and laws written around tax for corporations, because you just need to make it more difficult for people to do what they're doing by sending their money abroad and not paying tax. With that being said, there also needs to be structures and accountability for using that taxpayers' money. And I think that's what is supposed to be caught in this loop of shit. Why am I going to pay tax? Like, it's not going to. Why must I pay tax and I must still pay such exorbitant school fees and exorbitant medical schemes and a crazy amount of security and all these things? I mean, so I'm not going to pay tax, and therefore the poverty cycle starts again, and then the money that's allocated for social development through taxpayers' money is not used for that. No one must tell me there's no money to sort out the schools.
It's a lie.
Year after year, there was 50 billion now that's missing that went to Eastern Cape and other. Eastern Cape was the one what I saw, but there's other municipalities that is unaccounted for. Now, that is not the first time we're hearing about this. The culture is set. There's a way that we do things in South Africa. Investigation is open. We will inquire, and then next year the budget is allocated again, and this is what's been going on. So you are two sides. You get complacency and a political system and a government who is immune, who feel they are untouched and immune, and there was not one single corruption arrest made, right? And then on the other side, you have despondent citizens and businesses and taxpayers who are just like, why bother? So we are it's really frustrating because we want to come with solutions, and the solutions are there. Like, if the government wants to enforce it, they can do it. Tax the wealthy, sort out the schools, sort out education. There is, give a basic universal income, give a grant, like pension. Government pension is 1,800 rand.
How must people live? So we don't care about the youth, and we don't care about the elderly.
Yeah. So at the same time, what irritates me is that we are not a poor country. That is what irritates me. Like, there is money. Like,
Yeah.
let's put it to the right places and let's start building. So until that happens, I mean, like, accountability needs to come in. They need to come in. Like, the ANC Youth League needs to stand up for the youth, the unemployed. Like, the ANC, if you are ANC supporter and you a youth, you need to ask them, guys, what's happening? What are we doing? You look at the stats. Like, so I feel like there's a kind of shaking up that needs to happen, dude. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I do
we
think. Oh, sorry, Ellen.
We are stuck between a kleptocracy and the far right. Just wanted to say that.
So
And
the
I-
rest of the
I do-
country and the Western Cape.
Yeah.
Yeah, basically.
I do think there's also, the big underlying issue. Well, the one that I always want to bring up, which is capitalism, which needs to be destroyed. But in a more direct sense, it's something that Aiden and I have spoken about before, and I want to completely absolve Lee from this part of the conversation. But like, I feel like we need to undo the state. That's like, there's no way of this. I do not believe there's a condition under which a political party in South Africa can actually come into power and make the kinds of moves that we are proposing that need to be made. And so I think they need to be undone, and a new kind of way of thinking about organizing where we where people organize themselves. We see it happening. They're not
Yes.
named, they're not
Yes.
called autonomous states in South Africa, where people are taking over a piece of land and growing their own food, and then the DA comes and then they're like, nah, you don't have a license to grow food here. And then the people are like, well, you want to try that shit, we'll burn your shit down. And then the people continue growing their food. There's black women in I can't remember where this aquifer is, but it's like Philippi or somewhere. Those women,
So Philippi Horticultural.
those women
Oh.
basically established a
Yeah.
co-op without calling it a co-op, without calling it the anarchist movement, without calling it the communist, or these things are there. These things, people are organizing themselves and making sense of life for themselves in a way that is extra-statal, that exists outside of the logics of the ANC, the DA, the EFF, and all of these things. And the other thing that I wanted to mention that I think has circulated in conversations between us over the last months, but I think Lee also brought it up, was this idea of mutual aid. And
Very important, bro. That's
and-
where that's
and-
that teaches the skills of looking after one another.
right,
Like, sorry,
right, yeah,
carry
no,
on.
you I was gonna let you run with the so you can
Yeah,
carry
because
on.
it's not a theoretical thing, it's a practice.
Yeah.
Like, you see, and so, like, I know you guys are academics and you guys practice what you preach as well.
Don't swear at each other.
But I sometimes feel like what you mentioned, Wilton, there are these examples running, but somehow they get whitewashed by the word anarchist thing or like co-op, and it kind of it kind of changes, it kind of presents itself as something new, like something like, and you see this on the liberal side of things a lot, the white liberal sides of things, where it's like, we this trendy new anarchist restaurant, and like, you're not the first to do
Imagine
it.
an anarchist restaurant. Sorry.
We serve you what you
Possible.
you eat what we
Possible.
serve you.
Yeah.
You don't order. But what I mean is we must be very careful in theorizing something that needs practical solutions. Mutual aid is one of the most practical introductions for any, like, you don't need to study, read anything. Here's a project, there's an ongoing project, this is what we are doing, these are the outcomes, let's continue. And so in a sense, you get two things. You get the social skill development to teach people how to form mutual aid projects, and number two, you get to see the rewards of what you are doing. It's not stuck in some seminar, it's not people talking about it anymore. And I think that's what frustrates these people who are on the receiving end of funding, or like, we need the stuff now. Like, stop having symposiums and seminars and retreats on discussing this thing. And mutual aid is the dirt. Pack bags, come, like, drive the stuff. Like, you need to do. Stop talking.
Action.
Like, you know?
I just in defense of theory, and I'm the worst person to defend theory.
No, it's
because
necessary,
I fucking
sorry.
hate theory, or I've grown to dislike theory in a certain sense, and maybe that's because I'm in the United States of fucking America. Sorry, and I will say that, like, being able to provide historical context for a lot of these things is vitally important. Like, like, the problem is with something like anarchism is that people who call themselves anarchists are often white anarchists and have no race analysis, but think of themselves like socialist libertarians or something like that. And so we need to understand what these terms mean so that we don't allow these people to then come in and, like, try and introduce their anarchic feudalism, or,
Don't get it twisted.
or their white communism. Like, we need to be able to say, motherfucker, our people been doing this since, like, our people lived under apartheid.
So when people ask me, how
it
did
wasn't just separate amenities, it wasn't just separate, like, facilities, it was an entirely separated life. And because of that separated life, mutual aid was a way of life. But we don't have all the terms, the historical context, the language to be able
Yeah.
to like really grapple with that historical context. We need to do a fucking episode on mutual aid, maybe, bro.
We
Honestly,
do need
that's
to do an episode on mutual aid.
And-
I
But
feel
can
like
we also do
also
an episode on
black anarchism.
black anarchism? But if I can quickly come in and just say that, like, firstly, the site of the collapse of service delivery in this country is not on a national level, it's not on a provincial level, it's on a
Right.
municipal level.
There we go.
Right? It's happening in municipalities.
Yep.
Like small scale municipalities are struggling to provide water, electricity. We can talk about ESCOM as a big thing, but it's on the small, I think it was in the Northwest, there was that case, or the Northern Cape or something, there was a case of a community that took over their own sewerage.
yeah, they took it. They took
Yes.
and they fixed
like-
it. They fixed the problem
So-
that was 5 years. The problem that was 5 years old. They fixed it within
Yeah.
like 6 months.
So I think we must have that conversation about, okay, so what does it mean, firstly, to act as you are asking for, Lee, like action? What does action look like? And secondly, like, what does it mean to scale that? Do you know what I mean? Now you start
There we
on
go.
one level with one problem.
we
You're
go.
like, okay, this community we need in this community, we need access to food, we need access to water, we need this, we need that. Who's got these skills? Who can
Yeah.
do this? Who can bring this in? Whatever. And that, I think, is also, to go back about your point about theory, Walton, like that requires a very specific understanding about what the individual is, like how this idea of work, to just go back to the theme for this episode,
Oh yeah.
like this idea of work in this, we were
We
like going a
bad
bit
guys.
left
Sorry, if
field,
you're
which is-
listening,
which is cool.
It's still about
Yeah.
employment. Don't worry.
It is about employment. It's about employing yourself. No, I'm joking. Yeah, but I mean, it is a problem. Like the culture of the individual prevents people from collectively organizing. And is this idea of like a single path career? It is the idea of the entrepreneur. It is the idea of, the idea of a breadwinner. Like,
Yeah.
okay, it's not a chosen concept, but if you think about that concept a bit more carefully, it's a troubling concept.
Mhm.
Because what it says is there's one person who goes out and fights for sustenance,
Mhm.
and that's such a disturbing, unethical way of thinking about like being human. Do you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? On like a very base level. So yeah, I think we need to, like, all these things kind of interweave and they cross, and yeah, anyway,
Yeah.
me rambling, thanks.
So
No,
if
you
you're a young person, and you're listening, don't be nervous. Well, I mean, like, there's a lot of just-
Don't give
there's
up.
a lot. Don't give up. I know this sounds so airy fairy motivational stuff. We don't do that, guys. Sorry, if you're listening, we don't do that. But what I'm saying is, like, there's a lot of examples of good work going on. There's a lot of examples of people finding projects, finding career paths, finding purpose in non-conventional work situations. So there are options, and hopefully when we do post this, Aidan Walton, we can kind of attach a few links to some readings or to some places where people can find whatever we feel that they can get some value out of the world of work for young South Africans. There's some interesting pieces and some information. And the thing is, we've all struggled with that. All of us came to university knowing nothing, and we still don't know anything, but we try.
Yeah.
we the theory and the practical is both important, and they need a good balance. So don't feel like I haven't read this. If I haven't read
Yeah.
this, then I can't do this. I'm not an anarchist. I can't work in mutual aid. I cannot form a co-op. There's no such
Yeah.
thing. Like, everyone has their own part to play in this, and there needs to be balance and working together, I suppose, man. Like,
That's the thing. I mean, that was beautifully said, first of all, Lee. And I'm just gonna
Thank
ruin it now with my stumbling words. But yeah, I think to go back to something Aidan said about this is the problem of individualism. This is the problem also because individualism exists in this way because of liberalism and capitalism. And it's something that I think folks seriously need to need to take seriously, because capitalists will sell young people the dream that they're gonna work themselves out of poverty, or they're gonna work themselves into a position of being a successful business person through entrepreneurship. We need entrepreneurs, that they make the world genuinely interesting. But the danger in what these capitalists are selling you is that they don't tell you that, nine
There's a whole
times
other game.
nine times out of 10, the people that succeed in these ventures are people that already had capital backing them. So they had their parents or some kind of inheritance or something like that.
They knew the gatekeepers.
So,
They knew the gatekeepers.
I think it's important also that we understand collectively, and I don't want to use antagonistic language here, but I'm kind of tired of talking and I can't find the right words. We need to understand collectively who our enemy is. And our enemy is white capitalism, or racial capitalism, rather, to use a less incendiary term. Racial capitalism is the enemy here, and that, all the work, the organizing, the unionizing, the efforts to find employment that we do have to also, we also have to be wary of that. And then my last point for today is something that I want to reiterate from earlier, that just because, our president Cyril Ramaphosa came out and said he's gonna provide a 600,000 job development thing over the next year, does not mean young people are going to get those jobs and stay in those jobs, as Aiden pointed out. Our main concern as the Jelly and Custard podcast is for the livelihood of all South Africans to get better, but especially Black South Africans to get better. Because, and I use Black very broadly in the sense that Biko spoke about it. Because that's where our work lies collectively, as a podcast, but also as family people, as people concerned with the livelihoods of those around us. So yeah, we'll try and find some links around maybe stuff around grants, maybe mutual aid stuff, whatever we can find. We will link it in our social media. JXC podcast on Twitter and on Instagram. But yeah, I don't know if Aiden wants to have the last word, and then we can sign off.
Yeah, just to reiterate, I think we'll just leave as much material as we can about what we spoke about and directions in the show notes. And it's a pity our the star in our universe,
the star, truly the star,
is not MK.
The center.
The center of our world is not here today, but it's okay. He'll be here the next time, and he's got the sultry voice we all live for. So
okay,
yeah,
the money-making voice.
The money-making voice, yeah.
Yeah.
So
thank you guys for
solve unemployment with that voice alone. That was terrible. Can I take that back? Okay. On that note, goodbye and good night.
Yes.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers.